It's Tuesday afternoon, 4 p.m. in Switzerland. It's SpaceCafé Web Talk time. Our SpaceCafé today, 33 minutes with Jean-Jacques Tortora will begin soon. Thank you for joining us today for our talk about space and geopolitics. What's at stake for Europe? As always, we appreciate your participation and your ongoing feedback. Any response is very valuable for us and helps us to improve. I'm Torsten Kriening, your host today and publisher of SpaceWatch.Global. We are, as you all know, a Switzerland-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I know many of you are familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the SpaceCafé podcast. Our latest episode, released last week, features Stella Gillen, the CEO of ASD Eurospace. And for all our fans of audio content, we started a new format called SpaceCafé Radio, where we will talk with interesting people on the road, on shows and on conferences. Our first episode is online on our website, and that's my interview with Raicho Raichev of Endurosat, which I captured a month ago. Your feedback is highly appreciated. We also keep our fan shop open for you to support us actively and become a space watcher. The edition 1 has wonderful, cool items for you, your friends, and the ones you love, as you know, and your support is needed. If you've missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive available on our website in the events section and later on YouTube. So, when I introduced my guest last week, Luka Szwelczynski, I spoke about the hidden champion of the European space ecosystem. Today, I would position the current guest on the other end of the spectrum. He is not hidden at all. He is one of the front runners when it comes to giving Europe a voice on space policy. I'm a big fan and a big supporter of his work. With that, a very warm welcome, Jean-Jacques Tortora, to the SpaceCafé today. So,
thank you,
a few words about you and your absolute impressive career. Since June 2016, he serves as a director for the European Space Policy Institute in Vienna. And the decade before, he was the Secretary General of ASD Eurospace, which is the trade association for the European space industry. Before that, he was the head of the French Space Agency office in North America. And that goes on and on and on. And when I read this, I was, wow. I mean, it sounds absolutely impressive, and it is. I mean, other stages like the Deputy Director of Strategy of Programs at CNES, then the French representative at the ESA Industrial Policy Committee, advisor to the French Ministry, and so on. And you also have been in Kourou as head of the Ariane Operations Quality Department. And I'm sure that we can talk about the past, and you will have many, many exciting stories. But let's have a look today into the future. And again, a warm welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for laudative comments. You're putting a lot of pressure on me.
No. It's just, setting the stage for our audience. So, 2 years ago, I had the chance to interview Jean-Jacques already, and we spoke about Europe, a common European space policy. Now, 30 months later, where are we on that? And it's worth looking at the current situation. So let's start. In the recent year, there has been a significant and a rapid transformation across the entire space sector, as we all know. We report about that on a daily basis at SpaceWatch.Global, and you at ESPI, you're also producing many briefs and insight on that matter. So how has that rapid transformation distributed the relative stability in the space sector? What the relative stability the space sector has had since the beginning of the pioneering era. So what changed?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Torsten. And well, this is an interesting question that I will try to address within a few minutes. I could spend the rest of the day elaborating on that, actually. No, there are a number of changing parameters that we are noticing, and actually the space sector has been very stable over decades. Nothing really happened since between the 60s and I would say the early 2000s, and since then, in just a decade, everything has been changing. So I will quickly review the major factors. So first of all, we have now more players. Space is more accessible to a greater number of would be institutional or governmental as well as private actors. We have an impressive rise of private initiatives. This in terms leads to an increased pressure on space resources. I will not elaborate on this. I guess that those who are attending this discussion today are well aware of that. Now, what I would like maybe to highlight is how much this impacts the European policy. And the European space policy actually has one specificity, which is that it's actually heavily relies on the capacity of the European space industry to gain significant shares of the commercial and accessible markets. This is true for access to space, in particular with the Ariane program, which is very much focusing and targeting the commercial markets. It is also true for the European space industry at large, since the domestic demand coming from European governments or European institutions can hardly, I would say, provide for the critical mass of industrial activity to the European space companies. But now, with all these changes that are happening, we observe a shift in the historical business on which the European space sector has been flourishing, which is the big geostationary satellite business for both the manufacturing of the satellites and their launch in orbit through launch services. This is where the European space industry has been shining, and actually this domain, this area, is experiencing first a downturn, which was highly, I would say, previsible with the generalization of the optical fibers, etc., but also with the advent of the mega constellations, which has been very sudden, very fast, and which will put an unprecedented pressure on this part of the business. And this raises a number of questions for the European industry, and in turn, this raises a number of questions for the European space policy. And we will have, I guess, to deal with that. This is one aspect. The second aspect is the fact that actually all of this is taking place while our legal framework is actually inherited from ancient times, where space was considered as being able to provide unlimited resources. And now we know that these resources are not unlimited, and the next generations will have to deal with that. And this is something similar which happens in environmental issues at large. And we will have to account for that in the way we deal with space in the longer term. Actually, we cannot rely. So first, we have to interpret our legal texts like the Outer Space Treaty, and this interpretation will be quite important and quite critical, since we cannot rely on any kind of jurisprudence to arbitrate the cases that might happen in the future, because we have no authority and we will not have one. So all of this is taking place at the same time with the rise of a number of geopolitical tensions, and this raises a number of questions also for Europe. Europe used to be in the past very much open to collaboration, and which is deeply rooted in the culture and the approach of Europe to space. And actually, Europe has been very good at collaborating with everybody, with the United States, with Russia, with China. But now, in a more tense geopolitical environment, then we might have to reconsider our strategy. And these are, I think, three aspects that really call and press for, I would say, a revisit of the European space policy. So business, legal, and geopolitical.
Thank you very much. I mean, you mentioned that we have our European states, individual nations have their sole authority over their regulations and legislative provisions, without any doubt, and saying it's untouched. But that also could result in conflicting national space policies, or despite the fact that space is a shared resource. So, as you mentioned, the different interpretation of the Outer Space Treaty. So how important is it for a European international relations to ensure that national space policies are independent and / complement each other?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and we have, I think, current examples, seeing Denmark, seeing Norway as part of Europe, or Luxembourg, or others.
Yeah, actually, you are right to highlight the paradoxical situation in which we are with regards to space, where the space is by sheer nature a shared resource, but a shared resource dealt with through strictly national frameworks. And this movement that we observe, where more and more countries are now developing their national space policies, is a trend that will continue, because actually this is the way for them to also make sure that their companies, and there are more and more companies addressing space, that their national companies will also be, I would say, invited and fixed a legal framework to respect and to commit to the international obligations that are made to the country. Now, the problem and the risk that we have is a risk of inconsistency, and the question is the way forward. If we continue along this trend, if we continue having individual countries coming with their interpretation of the treaties and setting their rules, which they believe are the best for the interest of their national companies, then we might face a risk of inconsistency. And whatever the quality of the work being done, for instance, the United States came up with their Space Act, which was a very good document, where they have defined what is their interpretation of the Outer Space Treaty is. Then Luxembourg came up with another interpretation. And the question is the way forward. Should we continue in this way? And because actually the two interpretations are not exactly the same. They are not contradictory, but there are sometimes more than nuances. And if every country comes up with their interpretation, the question that we might face in the end is our ability to continue to collaborate internationally in space. What kind of situation might we face if the various companies are given different rights and different obligations depending on their nationality. I think that we should anticipate on this and try to really define a way to build up a consensus. And I think that as far as international collaboration is concerned, the European Space Agency has certainly a role to play, because ESA is really the core of the organization that is the core of the international cooperations of Europe with the rest of the world.
Yeah, sounds a bit like the flag of convenience, or where do I place my company? Where do I get the most benefits from? I mean, in what ways could we go about working together or to develop a shared European policy or for the space sector? I mean, could past experienced presidents from maritime or air provide us a guiding framework on how to approach that? I mean, there are activities in that frame, and many of us know about it. But is it for Europe a way forward? And I mean, we talk here about Europe.
Mm-hmm. I wish that maritime and aeronautics were able to provide us with some guidelines. But unfortunately, I guess that the situation is not exactly the same when it comes to space. One of the reasons for that is that in both maritime and oceans and airspace, we were able to I would say, make use of some kind of geographical segregation. So there is a national airspace where I would say the governments have full sovereignty. We have national waters and then international waters. In space, there is no national space. We come right away with the obligation of living together, of operating together. And actually, regarding the process or the way through which we could get to a more, I would say, harmonized situation, I think we could envisage either to continue the way we do, and as I said, with the risk of facing more and more inconsistencies between national legislations, which might in turn raise a number of issues. We could decide on setting up an authority that would arbitrate the situation, that would define a joint position, or a position that would be applicable to all. I do not believe that this second option is realistic at the moment. I think that many member states are much more careful, I would say, in avoiding any abandon of sovereignty, rather than really going towards more, I would say, putting in common this kind of resources. So so the first option for me is risky. The second option for me is not realistic, and we have to adapt to the situation and to nevertheless continue to progress. And I think that this can only come through the development of a joint vision, of a European model. And what is worrying is that at the moment in Europe, we do not have a forum to discuss or to build such convergence. Of course, ESPI, as a think tank, can contribute to this reflection and to trying to harmonize positions and achieve such convergence. But I think that we would need something formal to really move forward. And at the moment, I think that this is something that still needs to be discussed and agreed upon, and probably we have a long way ahead before we can agree on something like that, unfortunately.
I see, and I'm happy that you mentioned our SP's capacity as a think tank, and we will talk about the upcoming autumn conference, which will happen in, I think, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or in a moment. But putting here your competency into play, there's a concrete topic or concrete example I came around, or when reading that Austria released end of July this year their Austrian space strategy 2030 plus, and it states on one page, the focus space and sustainability will be established at ESPI. I thought, wow, that's pretty good that using your think tank based in Vienna to have a place where to consult with the government on a very concrete level. But now you're not just an Austrian institute, you're a European, that's what it says, otherwise it would be ASPI. So, and did ESPI work actively on the Austrian space strategy? And can we see the Austrian space strategy as it did develop over the last months as a blueprint for others? And I don't want to talk here about Germany at that stage, but maybe we could inspire people who are here in Germany about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Torsten. Well, actually, we were very happy to be able to contribute to this effort that was made by Austria and the Austrian ministries or governments, and we are grateful to have been offered the opportunity to support as much as we could, and also grateful that Austria recognized the expertise of ESPI. Actually, I think that our position in Austria is quite in line with what the Austrian space strategy suggests, because in Europe, space is dealt with, in Paris regarding ESA affairs, in Brussels regarding EU affairs. And I used to say in Vienna when it comes to global space affairs, because of course of the presence of the UNOSA, the United Nations, here where and this attracts space stakeholders from all over the world, and we take advantage of this positioning, and we are very happy to. First, I would say take and try to take the most of the exchange of experience, of information, of analysis that we can get with representatives from international organizations, but as well to contribute through our channels to I would say the promotion of a global of positions related to the management of global space concerns towards the European policymakers. So the approach of Austria is quite interesting, and yes, I guess it could serve as a model because it was based on a broad consultation and a search for a consensus. And would any other European member states want to go down the same path, then of course ESPI would be more than happy to support, because actually this is what ESPI is meant for.
Mm-hmm. Got it. You mentioned the United Nations. They had recently taken steps to try and guide cooperation. I mean, with the LTS, with the long-term sustainability guidelines, or also the recently established space resource working group on space resources. But UN members are under no obligation to translate UN guidelines into national legislation. So there's still a gap. What kind of challenges could emerge without a clear and a consensual legal framework for all of the spacefaring nation, and what impact could that have on a geopolitical level in the future? And that all in light of Artemis and the China-Russian or proposed moon station, or even a spaceship to bring the commercial aspect into that. I mean, it's a damn complex environment we are talking here about.
Yes, I think that the principle of the UN is and of the COPUOS is to discuss, to build up a consensus on a non-binding basis. Now, if we consider the variety of countries contributing to the debates within the COPUOS, but it is that the key question is whether we should go towards more binding regulation or whether we should stay as is and to invite and encourage more and more countries to actually translate into their national legislation the decisions that are being made at UN level. So actually we have three, if I want to be very basic in my reasoning, we have three different cases. So you have on one hand the big and the space power, the major space powers, which actually tend to privilege their liberty of action in space. They want to make sure that they will be able to take and to do whatever they need to do in order to ensure the protection of their interests in space. And of course, they usually are not very much in favor on going towards going towards a more binding and more constraining approach. At the other end of the spectrum, you have the newcomers, and the newcomers, they have, they are struggling to get their autonomous access to space, and they are not likely to also welcome more stringent measures. Actually, they do not see why they would be imposed more constraints than the ones that were the first comers or the early comers in space have been facing. And actually this surprisingly and paradoxically results in a de facto consensus as both end of the spectrum. And well, in the middle, you will find the middle-sized, I would say, space powers, a lot of European member states that would be open to a different approach to space, but which are at the moment quite a minority, I would say. And the result of that is that we are most likely we will observe a status quo and probably we will stay with the current situation for a while. And the current situation, I would say the outcome and the result of this situation is that actually we are more or less applying a first come, first serve rule. When you want to, for instance, if we consider the deployment of the mega constellations, okay, if you really have any intention to deploy one, you should really rush in order to be able to make sure that you will get the right orbits, all the frequencies you need, etc., etc. So now, is this first come, first serve basis the model for the future? This is a key question, and I will not even try to address this one today. But the result of that is that Europe, I think, must revisit and rethink its positions in a number of areas, because this is also related to as I said, the evolution of geopolitics and increasing tensions, international tensions, and Europe will have to reflect on its future and its ambitions, its intentions in both exploration and science, where international collaboration is of essence, I would say, and actually with I would say, considering this increasingly conflictual interests in space, I think that we should also reflect on, I would say, a notion that I would call space diplomacy. We try to pay some thoughts about that, but I think that there is an avenue for further reflection here, first at European level, and then I guess also internationally.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning space diplomacy. There's something we are cooking on as well on our end. So, and I'm happy to share that with you then later. Before we coming to a few of these wonderful questions, and thank you everyone for sending them in. Two questions about the upcoming conference, because you talked about a forum where to meet, where to discuss, and you're providing on a very annual basis this forum in the ESPI Autumn Conference, which will happen this year, 5th of 7th to 7th of October. And this year it's focusing on the theme of European satellites and poses the question of why does Europe need European satellites? So why did ESPI choose this theme for this year's conference? I mean, sounds like, yes, because we can. So.
I actually tried to raise the question of the, I would say, the European ambitions and the European strategic autonomy in space, but in a, I would say, thought-provoking or provocative manner. This wording of strategic autonomy, I know that it's often raising a number of reserves, of concerns. So I use it very, very carefully today. But no, the key question is about that. Actually, Europe has achieved a number of things in space, and I think that the results and the achievements of both European space agencies, European space industry are highly regarded worldwide. But now we are facing a situation with a new situation with the rise of private actor and a more private, not private oriented, but private controlled or privately managed development of space systems. We are now, I would say, offered the opportunity to procure, I would say, turnkey systems rather than going through complex developments of new capacities. And this, I would say, is a key question that we need also to anticipate at European level. It's whether we should really stick to our current position in making a point of having really our own satellites to deliver the data that we need, or if we should move away from that and rely on the commercial sector to provide turnkey solutions, so either systems or even data, the data that we need for the implementation of our policies. And I think that this question is today, I would say, raised in a very different terms than it used to be in the past. In the past, it was obvious. If you wanted to take advantage of space capacities, you needed your own. Today, it is not exactly the case. And I guess that we need to reinforce the reflection on this and to really rebuild a consensus at European level on the fact that, yes, I believe and I'm convinced of that Europe should continue to maintain its autonomy. But okay, there might be some limits also to this that need to be identified, discussed, and agreed upon. But all of this, I think it's a reflection that I would say many member states have at their own level, but that should be now raised at a more broader European level. And this is the reason why we had this, we decided to select this topic for our conference.
Great. So could you provide an overview, a really quick overview, because we get our yellow flags and red flags from the production team already. So of the panels and the goals ESPI is hoping to achieve with this conversation. I mean, you alluded on that already, but what can we expect this year?
Okay. So actually, we will have 3 sessions. So one on the Green Deal for space, and on the Green Deal in space. So Green Deal for space is quite obvious. It's what space can do for climate or monitoring or management of natural resources, etc. But the question will be, what can space do beyond just monitoring and in order to support action for the Green Deal? I think this is a question that we will try to raise. And the second is a Green Deal in space, because nowadays with the pressure on space resources, now space is not only a contributor to the Green Deal on Earth, but it's now also integral part of the environmental concerns, and should be integrated as such as one of the domains in which we should also think in terms of sustainability and longer-term perspective. And sustainability is not just about what the UN is doing, but it must be reflected also in European space strategy. Second session will be about the space infrastructure for the digital age. This is definitely the question about the mega constellations. Do we need one for secure connectivity? Do we need one to support the digital transformation of Europe? Do we need one to also sustain our technological autonomy? A number of key questions to be addressed. I noticed that one question is about that, but I'm afraid I will not be able to elaborate much more on this today. And the last session will be industrial strategy, about industrial strategy to face the new global challenges. So European space policy has been, I would say, a driving force for the building up of the European industry at large, with a very active role played by ESA in this. And the key question is whether now your space industrial policy might not become a source of divergence or antagonism among member states. A key question that probably we would like to raise. So involving supply chains, procurements, public demand, etc.
Don't tell us too much, because otherwise people will not come. So, but I think it's fair to say to all of you in the audience, the conference is online, and it's if you're registered, it's available for free, if I'm not mistaken, or correct me if I'm wrong. So you can have some wonderful sessions online without moving your home office. So isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
Great. I'm looking forward even coming over to Vienna during these days, or to meet in person. So I know we are running out of time, our dear production team, but let us get one question. I would like to choose the question from Mark. Thanks for sending that in this early. So how can the EU, ESA, and national laws provide more outcome of the SDGs? And you alluded on the sustainability already, Jean-Jacques.
Yeah. Actually, I think that, I tried to address a bit this one, but definitely what needs to be done at Europe is to ensure consistency. The higher risk I see is that we have national legislations that are not compatible with each other. So we have a common set of rules that is discussed and agreed upon at UN level. There are, I would say, very good guidelines that need to be translated in national legislations, but we all know that this is not enough. And the key question is, what about the remaining work to be done beyond the current agreed guidelines? So we have two options. Either we wait for the UN to come up with their next, I would say 2.0 guidelines, which might take another decade, or we try to move ahead and to move forward. And this is where this is what I was suggesting, having here in Europe a forum where we could discuss and build up a consensus, where ESA would be a key contributor because they are very much exposed internationally through all the collaboration that they have with other space powers. We have the EU, which is also a major, I would say, customer, a major user, a major player in space, owner and operator of the biggest European space infrastructure and space assets. And we have, of course, the member states, because they are, as we discussed previously, all of this space legislation remains handled at national level. And the key issue is to ensure convergence and consistency.
Thank you very much for your answers, and thank you very much for your time, Jean-Jacques. Harini, Alain, Alexandre, Christian, Jörg, Mark, thank you very much for your questions. We will send them over to the team of Jean-Jacques to ask for a written answer and provide them then together with the video link in the next day. So I'm afraid now we have to come to an end before our production team is switching us off here and takes us from the wire.
Too bad. I know these very interesting questions that I'm really sorry that I've been too talkative to be able to address.
Absolutely. I mean, it also gives us our confidence for more space cafes on that topic. So and we will continue to following up on space policies in our future space cafes, in the web talks and on our magazine. But before we finish, please do not miss our on Thursday, on the 23rd, so this week, at 9:30 a.m. our Central European time, we have the next Space Law Breakfast with our good friend Stephen Freeland and with our wonderful guest Setsuko Aoki and Peter Hulsroy. So 9:30 on Thursday, we will talk about our space law and demystifying space law on current topics. So on the 23rd in the evening, we have our very own Chiara Munter as guest in the Space Bar by our friends of Astro Agencies in Scotland. And on Friday at 6 p.m. Central European time, we have our next Space Café Canada by Dr. Jessica West with Dr. Samantha Laura talking about astronomy and the challenges from there. Next week, we will be at the other UN location, not in New York, but in Geneva, and guest at the Space Security Conference at UNIDIR, and we will broadcast live from there, and we will have the chance to speak, or I have the chance to speak with Robin Geis, the current director of UNIDIR, about the challenges and their point of view. And on the 5th of October, we will have our Space Café 32 minutes with Mike Simmons about the overview effect. All these events are online on Eventbrite already, and as always, we would like to hear your feedback, so please check in with us on Twitter, on Facebook, or LinkedIn. Don't forget to sign up for our daily or bi-weekly newsletters, and if you like to treat yourself with something special, become a Space Watcher today. Your support will help us. Take your credit card, visit our fan shop at shop.spacewatch.global. It can't be easier. Thank you all very much for your interest today, and thank you again, Jean-Jacques, for your inspiring talk and being my guest. And thanks to the entire team behind the scenes for doing their great job week by week again. I hope you all will stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you on Thursday morning. In the meantime, visit our website and follow us on social media. Don't forget, become a Space Watcher. Thank you very much. Jean-Jacques.
Thank you all. And I'm trying to reply the questions in written, but okay, I hope that you will receive some of my replies before we are turned off. Thank you, bye.
Okay, thank you, bye-bye.